So Representative Omar blamed the United States for the terrorist attacks on our country, saying that terrorism is a reaction to our involvement in other people's affairs. She smeared U.S. service members involved in Black Hawk Down. In other words, she slandered the brave Americans who were trying to keep peace in Somalia. Omar minimized the September 11th attacks on our homeland, saying, some people did something. I don't think so. Some people did something. Yeah, some people did something, all right. She pleaded for compassion for ISIS recruits attempting to join the terrorist organization. She was looking for compassion. Omar laughed that Americans speak of al-Qaeda in a menacing tone and remarked that you don't say America with this intensity. You say al-Qaeda makes you proud. Al-Qaeda makes you proud. You don't speak that way about America. And at a press conference just this week, when asked whether she supported al-Qaeda, that's our enemy. That's our enemy. They are a very serious problem that we take care of, but they always seem to come along somewhere. She refused to answer. She didn't want to give an answer to that question. Omar blamed the United States for the crisis in Venezuela. I mean, think of that one. And she looks down with contempt on the hard-working Americans, saying that ignorance is pervasive in many parts of this country. And obviously and importantly, Omar has a history of launching vicious anti-Semitic screeds. And she talked about the evil Israel, and it's all about the Benjamins. Not a good thing to say. So that's Omar.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate you bringing this en bloc up today. I fully support this, and it's important for me to point out a few things. As my colleague who just spoke used the frequent use of the words honestly and honest, let's just get to a lot of what's left out. So the BDS movement has not distanced itself from Hamas, a designated foreign terrorist organization. BDS supporters individually are not distancing themselves from Hamas either. It is wrong to be blaming all Israeli and Palestinian violence, quote, as being due to an occupation. Last Friday, Fatih Hamad, a senior Hamas official, called upon Palestinians worldwide to kill all Jews. This is a senior Hamas official just before the weekend. During a closed meeting in October 2017 between Hamas chief Sinwar and Gazan youth about reconciling with the Fatah movement, Sinwar stated that the time spent discussing recognition of Israel is over, and now Hamas will instead discuss when they will wipe Israel out. Hamas uses women and children as human shields. They declare jihad as an obligation. They deny humanitarian aid to their own people. They deny human rights, launching rockets from Gaza into Israel, killing innocent civilians. Tens of thousands of rockets in Lebanon being ready to be launched by Hezbollah. Existential threats to Israel all around it. Our greatest ally in the Middle East. One, that there's been a historic relationship between our two nations, a beacon of hope and freedom and liberty in a region of the world that is filled with challenges. We want to be neutral arbiters. Let's not deny our right and our duty to also be honest brokers. To spend an entire time in justifying opposition to HRES 246, based off of everything that's wrong is all due to the Israeli occupation, why not point out the fact that in 2008, Israel offered to withdraw from 93% of Judea and Samaria in the West Bank? Or what about our students on college campuses right now from coast to coast being targeted with blatant anti-Semitism in the name of BDS? Or taking into consideration the founder of BDS and all of his blatant anti-Semitism? Or the Palestinian authorities pay to slay. They financially reward terrorism. They treat you to a state funeral. They will rename football stadiums after you. We want to use honest and honesty in our remarks. We'll give you a whole lot more honesty. Every year, Hamas mobilizes Palestinians in their days of rage to attack Israelis at their border, calling them to throw rocks and fire missiles at Israel. Often results in actual violence. Hamas uses incendiary kites and balloons, which has destroyed some 8,000 acres of Israeli farms, parks, and forests. And I was pointing out, just last Friday, a senior Hamas official called for the murder of every Jew in the world. And you want to oppose HRES 246 under the justification that all the violence is due to an Israeli occupation with no honesty as it relates to any of the violence targeting innocent Americans. By the way, when this committee passed and it became law, the Taylor Force Act, that's not an Israeli citizen. That's a United States military veteran, a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point. And the Palestinians pay the terrorist to murder the innocent American and Israeli. We provide tax dollars to the Palestinians, and we demanded more accountability. We could go through the list of the 1,355 people killed by Palestinian violence and terrorism. I would blame the people who are inciting that violence and financially rewarding terror, and I would certainly blame the person who actually is responsible for that. The person who actually stabs, the person who shoots, the person who terrorizes. No, they are not martyrs. They're terrorists. And Israel, as our great ally, should be supported. And this work against BDS, point out the BDS founder, if people aren't familiar with it, quote, "We are witnessing the rapid demise of Zionism and nothing can be done to save it, for Zionism is intent on killing itself. I, for one, support euthanasia." That's just one of the quotes. I encourage all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle for what has been fantastic bipartisan support. But don't come to this committee and in this Congress and start blaming Israel for all of the violence that is happening to it, blaming them for an occupation. That I will take the strongest of exception with, and that is not honest. To be accusing Israel of everything that they are suffering from.
The gentleman's time has expired.
He's criticized for good reason. I yield back.
Thank you, Chair. Representative O'Neill, I'm just wondering, are there, I was a union member for a long time, and I've also gotten an opportunity to work in the private sector. And I'm curious to know if you know of any employer that has a provision where they decrease pay for employees. I find that a little strange, and so I just wanted to know where that thought comes from, and if you know where an employee gets their pay decreased.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I was a business owner. I recently sold my share, so I don't own it anymore, but there are plenty of businesses out there, especially those that depend on employees' productivity, like I was in the trades. So I owned a company that was a tile setting company, and if we didn't get out there and do the work, and if I didn't have highly productive employees, they were paid based on their productivity. So if they had issues, it is very possible that their pay would reflect those issues. If they were on probation for something, for some sort of violation, that could be coordinated with a pay reduction. It's something that businesses do all the time, and it could be the step before someone is actually fired. So it's an important thing, and it gets people's attention, you know, when they see it in their paycheck that their performance does not meet the standard.
Representative Omar. Hudson, I think did you have some things?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Hudson? Was there a question for Mr. Hudson?
No, I think he was saying that he wanted to add something, so I didn't know if he had something to add.
Mr. Hudson, is there a response to the question? Do you have a response to that question?
Madam Chair, yes,
Are you
ma'am.
saying that you aren't aware of any businesses that decrease pay? Because that was the question.
Madam Chair, I think what Chair O'Neill perhaps could be referring to, there are some instances where the pay structure is different. So for an example, she had indicated that she had come out of the towel industry. I'm not sure if these were commission employees who may have been on like an 80-20 split. In that instance, there is a situation where a pay might be reduced. Or if we have a supervisor who perhaps had a performance improvement issue or a behavioral concern, and we demoted this supervisor, that is an instance where pay might be decreased. But just an employee who has not been under some sort of performance improvement program, having their pay reduced, I've never heard of that.
Well, Mr. Hudson, I think Representative Neal knows exactly what she says. And I think we've had a little conversation back here when the question was asked. I know Representative Uglem, do you want to speak to that point?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Omar, if you happen to be a salesman in this world, and you can be selling cars, you could be selling siding, you could be selling just about anything, and you are paid on commission. So if you don't sell anything, you don't make anything. So you can have good years, you can have bad years. Probably really one of the best examples is a real estate agent. So it's the idea that people can make less money year to year, not to mention all the bonus situations that are out there in industry. It happens. It happens a lot. It doesn't necessarily happen, you know, here in the public sector, but it's pervasive and very, very common in the private sector. Thank you.
And I'd like to add that in the private sector as well, people, if they are not performing at their job, get demoted, and with that demotion comes a pay cut. And that's not even related to being in a commission position, that's just in a regular position as well. Representative Omar.
I think a commissioned position is very different than what we are discussing today.
Representative Omar, I mentioned the fact that it's not just limited to commission. It's also for anybody that is demoted. So you can be in a regular job, not part of a commission situation, but if you're failing to perform, you'll get demoted, and then you get a pay cut with it. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. So I